You suffer from something that is inside you, and yet you externalize it and say, that person, that event, that situation is causing me pain. Will you get it through your heads that if the pain is in you, that you are both the cause of it and, with understanding, the cure of it? And I'll tell you a major mistake you are making, and deliberately making, because you don't want to see yourself as either the cause or the cure. Listen carefully. You are keeping the appearance that the pain, that is the cause, is out there. You are keeping that going by answering the world. You're keeping it going by speaking to the world. You are under the compulsion and the deception of thinking, for example, suppose you're accused of something. Why do you answer? Huh? When someone accuses you of something, I will ask you why you answer at all. What compulsion do you have to protect yourself? To try to make that person understand? The next time you're accused of anything, of being a failure, even your own mind, right? Huh? Your own feelings accuse you of being a failure, of being a flop, or wrong, whatever. When you hear that accusation from either the exterior world or from your own mind, why don't you sit back like this and listen to what is being said very attentively, and not do, say, or feel anything in return? Do you want to smash the problem? Make it disappear? This is how to do it. But you can't do that, of course. You can't do that yet. Because you still want to reply to the accusation, to whatever comes your way in the form of a negativity. You still want to reply to it in order to be you. We're right back where we started, aren't we? You want to be someone who is, you're accused of being a terrible sort of person. You want to defend yourself in order to be someone who is a good person, or maybe even a terrible person, but at least you're that. Why don't you sit back the next time anyone or anything accuses you, and go like this, like I'm doing now physically, and be completely quiet. Is someone coming in?
Yeah.
All right. I will guarantee you that there is no law anywhere in human books or in the universe that compels you to answer an accusation. There is a law that says you will be very wise and you'll begin to free yourself of yourself if you begin to understand an accusation. And you begin to understand it by doing what I said a minute ago, by not being self-protective at all, self-defensive at all, but slowing down your mind and your emotions to where you have no answer at all. You have nothing to say to the accusation. There's no one there to answer. You've freed yourself from all your illusions, from all your little eyes that we've talked about, from the impulse to feel something. Haven't you ever noticed that, by the way, how eager we all are to feel something in a situation? You want to get emotional about it. You want to either love someone or you want to hate someone. the thing we can't abide would be the silence of feelings as well as thought. Because that is terrifying, is it not? Oh, you don't know that, huh? No, you don't know that. You don't know that if you tried, the first time you try, sitting back and not, I said anything. And the worse things that happen to you, the better for this particular exercise. Getting found out, for example, getting caught at something, get caught out of a role. Marvelous. It's about time we began to expose ourselves to ourselves. Don't go around telling other people your private life, obviously. But seeing that the problem we have when accused, when hurt, when disappointed, when anything, is because we react to it at all. When you first start practicing this technique, you will confound both the world and yourself. You will certainly confound the world. Please fight with me is what they're saying. Please argue with me. Love me or hate me, but don't ignore me. This is what the world is saying, and they can't. Maybe they'll think you're stupid at the start. And we used to have the stupidity of trying to go after 5 or 6 answers and can't decide which one to take, which is stupidity. That's right, we used to be very stupid. Maybe we still are, huh? But now, having refused to reach for an easy answer, and it's so easy to grab into the box of habitual reactions and pull the first one out, because we've been doing that so long, it's automatic, not at all difficult. But we begin to confound other people and make them very nervous, which is not our motive, of course. That would be wrong, to deliberately make people nervous until you can do it consciously, which is another thing. You'll confound them because you refuse to fight. 2 boxers get up in the ring, they both expect the other one to bop away, right? One of them suddenly decides he doesn't want to fight anymore, so he walks over in the corner and sits down. The other one stares at him. You wonder what's going on. Hey, how am I going to get my $100 for this fight tonight when I don't even have an opponent? This is what your psychological opponent out in the world is thinking when you refuse to fight. How am I going to get my reward of my thrill of hatred? How am I going to get my shot of egotistical thrillism today unless I have someone to bounce the fists back and forth with? So you confound them. And their next step is to depart from you. And this will give you both relief and anxiety, won't it? Your neurotic friends start to leave you. You won't have anyone to fight with, but because you understand that it's not necessary to fight, that you can sit back and be silent, then the relief enters. Do you know what peace of mind is? I vow to you, it's the absence of nutty friends. And maybe they consider that that's their peace of mind, our absence, right? We also begin to confound ourselves because this is new territory. This is a strange place. This is the unknown. This is where, when that man and that woman says that certain thing, that sarcastic little remark, or that slight, or that disapproval, and you sit back and refuse to do anything with it, you refuse to catch the ball and toss it back. When you first practice this, you are going to be very confounded, very confused, and you won't know what to do, which is the precise objective of it. Not knowing what to do. Remember, didn't you know what to do before? Of course you did. Get nervous, or go get rageful, or pass it off as a joke, But I can't do that anymore because that is harming me, and I've seen that I don't want to harm me anymore. So, no matter how rageful is the accusation, how that other person says, look what you've done to me, how you've hurt me, no matter how much they throw that at me, I'm going to deliberately go into the confusion and remain in it of not knowing how to answer. And if I don't know how to answer, if I'm not going to reach down into the grab bag of answers, if I'm not going to do that, I'm sure going to get nervous. I'm sure going to get jittery. Because my idea of doing something is to reach down and take the one out of 100 packaged, ready-made responses to the challenge that I've always had. But my hand doesn't reach down for any of them. Wow, what am I going to do now? Well, what you're going to do is have the courage to do nothing, say nothing, feel nothing, just to see what happens to your internal state as a result of it, and the consequences of your refusal to reply or of no consequence. The only thing that matters, and I'll go into this a little more deeply, either tonight or tomorrow with something very specific. The only thing that matters is that I do something new, that I do something authentically different. And boy, not only are you going to be confused for the first 100 times that you try this, but you're going to get scared at what's going to happen to you. And let me tell you something. I guarantee you that there is such a thing as demons. Not the kind you see in a TV movie. Those are obvious demons. But the demons definitely exist, which simply are part of the darkness, the forces that don't want to evolve, the forces that are anti-truth, anti-God. And when you make your decision as well as you can, and it'll be very weak at the start, when you make your decision to sit back and not reach into the grab bag of answers, among other things that will happen to you is the horrible prodding and accusations of dark forces that exist both in you and out in that other person. But let's specify that you will be attacked, you will be accused by your own mind operating incorrectly, which is what demons are. And they will try to force you, scream at you. They will scream at you. This is what's driving you batty, driving you crazy, hearing these screams. They will insist, they will demand, they will threaten that you reach into the grab bag of a usual response and give it in order to revive them, in order to keep their life going, because they sense, they know that they are in danger. Are you following? You understand? All right. Sensing that you have at last, after all these years, found something right to do with your life, they begin to feel threatened by the truth, by the light, by God, if you will. So they will scream at you and tell you to reach down and take them. At this point, because you're hearing these things, you can become knowledgeable of what's happening, and this is your right weapon against them by simply, then again, you were accused out there by that man, by that woman, by that committee. You are accused, and you determine that you're not going to fall down underneath that. No! You've suffered long enough. All right, that's the first victory. And when you win a first victory, you make all the devils, all the demons in you and in that exterior world very nervous. You begin to activate them. And they get their pitchforks. And they get their pitchforks that don't look like pitchforks, too. They look like money. And they look like rewards of any kind. And they will then go into the secondary attack of forcing you, well, down the list, of forcing you to feel guilty, to feel ashamed, to feel as if you're not doing your part, to make you feel immoral, to make you feel ashamed of yourself in any way they can. So this means that as you grow and are able to recognize the first attack of the accusation of a negative person, then you've passed that stage and made a small victory by determining not to reply to them. Then you indeed have to be very, very careful and very, very watchful to see how, again, you see, the devil never gives up. Well, he does give up. He can be extinguished entirely, but he doesn't give up for a long, long time. And so these demons will demand that you reactivate them, which is the same thing as reactivating anything, everything in your past, which are what the weapons are made of, the weapon of accusation back to the person who accused you. And they will scream at you. They will scream at you, and until, because you're young, you're still the prince instead of the king, and the prince makes mistakes, remember? You will make this mistake of yielding to them and saying, well, they said that I will cease to live. They said that something bad will happen to me. They threatened me, and so I had to yield to them. Otherwise, because we believe them, you see, we still believe in demons, which is the same as believing in ourselves, you see, believing in our false selves. So finally, because the pressure becomes too great, we reach down into the grab bag and take that accusation in return, the rude remark, the hot retort, whatever it is. We grab that and exteriorize it. It's already in here. Once you've grabbed it in here, inside you, it is in you. Then you either have to suppress it or externalize it by shouting back at the other person. All right, so you see, we have made one right move by determining to sit back and fight for ourselves by not fighting at all. We've made that one right move. This in turn arouses the viciousness. You don't know how vicious you are. You don't know how vicious the world is. You're also asleep, dreaming or what. This arouses the demons in you, but you see, because we're in this class understanding the nature of demons, the next time it happens, you could see how, for example, one demon says, instead of sitting there quietly and trying to understand the accusation that come to you, you had better be a decent human being and apologize to that person. So you apologize. Why did you apologize? You apologized in order to relieve the tension, didn't you? In order to relieve the pain. Who suggested that you apologize for that self-centered reason, for the reason of relieving yourself from the pressure, when you know very well that the last thing you must do if you want to advance inwardly is to refuse to relieve the pressure? Who suggested that? The demon that succeeded in that particular case, right? Look at all we've learned so far. Most of all, and I'm doing it physically as a physical illustration, we've discovered the secret of winning by doing nothing. The doing of nothing being the same thing as so thoroughly understanding where all these impulsive, compulsive, reckless actions came from. They came from all the self-protections inside of me, all the self-promotions inside of me that I thought were necessary. It is not necessary. It is not necessary to continue to destroy ourselves by promoting or protecting ourselves. What is good and necessary is to see through the whole charlatanish charade, see through it, and sit right in the middle. You're sitting on the rug, a nice soft rug, in the middle of the floor, ringed around by 50 demons in all appearances, fierce, impressive, some of them very smooth, but you can tell they're demons by the way they talk. And you're sitting right in the middle, and they're all screaming at you at once, accusing you of 1,000 things. And you just sit there and listen and do nothing. You're not even intimidated by those who are in back of you. Do you know what policemen do when they have a suspect? They always get a lot more than the suspect. If there's one suspect, there's always 4 or 5 policemen. Intimidation. And always 2 or 3 will stand in front, but there'll be 2 or 3 others in back. Have you ever noticed how nervous you get when someone is standing in back of you and you don't know what they're doing or what they're thinking, they might be creeping up on you? You'll be perfectly at ease with the demons in back of you as well as the ones in front of you, because they can't approach you. You know what they can do? They can scream and holler and accuse, and they can't touch. How would you like to live in this world untouched by the world because you're untouchable? Just think, 4 billion people in the world and you're one person. How would you like to just be able to sit there and no matter what they find out about you? And there's things to find out, aren't they? Huh? Are there things people find out about us? Huh? What if they found out you can conquer the world? So do practice the very simple, very basic, very fundamental, very profound, very workable method, practice, technique of sitting back. Of course you're not going to be calm. I told you why you're not going to be calm. Because you want to do something to save yourself, don't you? You've got something to protect. You want someone to speak for you, and so you reach down and find whatever appropriate spokesman is right for that occasion. Oh, what do we care how nervous we have to get? What do we care if we have to experiment? What do we care? Sit back there and they're screaming at you and they're crying and they're telling you what a bum you are. I emphasize this because you know this the world is always doing, and a lot of it is in imagination too, but they're doing that actually. Okay, so you said that to me. What do you want from me? What am I supposed to do? You're saying this silently. Eventually you won't say that, but it's a start. All right, go on. You've gone into your tirade for a half hour? Fine. What? I don't... What? They won't know what to do. But you understand what you are doing. There's no permanent place in you that needs to shout back at a shouting world. There's a temporary place, and it's pretty much filled up with us, isn't it? Filled up with everything we have to say to protect ourselves. We say something in order not to get hurt, but the very fact that we have to protect ourselves means we're already hurt. This is what is known as having a quiet mind. Of having a mind that knows its real home, that is living at home. And nothing dismays it, because there's no one there to be dismayed. All the demons in the world, all the demons presently in any of us, tremble at the sound of such words and feelings and thoughts that you've been given tonight. Let them tremble. What have we to do with darkness? Nothing. And we better begin to see it as a fact. Your real nature, who you really are, has nothing to do with the demons. You're not related to them. The prince is not related to the criminal. Isn't that beautiful? This we can do. This we can find. This we can live. I promise you that. I guarantee you that. Now we're going on and find it. We're going to do it. Okay, let's take a break. All back, huh? Pretty much. Will you agree that we have a hard time learning anything?
Yes.
Very hard. In that case, don't miss tomorrow's meeting. Because the title of tomorrow's talk will be How to Learn from a New Experience. How to learn from a new experience, and you'll find out what a new, authentically new experience consists of. So don't miss it. All right, let's see the hands of those of you who had an awkward, embarrassing, slightly nervous, etc., negative experience during the break. Let's see your hands. How many of you had them but didn't know you had them? Everybody raise their hand. All right. You see, unless you know that yesterday, which was 10 minutes ago, the break, unless you know that yesterday had you in its clutches, unless you see that, you can't drop it and sit back and live fresh and give no answer to it. Because you're sitting here also unconsciously running that incident over in your mind. It's back in there somewhere. You're looking at someone, you're at the same time it's going on back there, right? You are running that through your mind, not knowing it. And that is the answering to the accusation that we've been talking about. Can't you see the necessity of when you walk out of that door and you bump into someone because you're careless, or you drop your cigarettes, ashes on the rug a little, and you scooped it out and you felt idiotic for a little bit? Can't you see that unless you see your reaction to the incident at the time it happens, that it is going to go into your unconscious, and that's one small little imp demon that's going to nag at you for a few minutes. And you accumulate, and we accumulate 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 of these little thought demons all during our lives up to this point. Is it any wonder we're driven crazy every day? All right. There is a way out. And that is, you should, at the same time, maybe you did drop your cigarette on the rug. At the same time you dropped it, you watched your nervous, embarrassed react. Oh, I'm sorry, whatever. You watched that at the time it happened. Certainly pick up the cigarette and put it in the ashtray. And then you sit back and don't you dare go along for 1 second longer with that embarrassment. You are answering the accusation. And for a straight 30 minutes, I told you not to do that you don't have to do that. But you forgot what you were supposed to remember. If you could have remembered that, you dropped the cigarette, you're nervous and a little bit embarrassed, wondering what the owner of the house would say, for example. You picked it up, you corrected the situation, and you came back and sat down. Unless you were aware of yourself at the time it happened, I will guarantee you that you've planted an imp in your mind that's going to nag you and join forces with 10,000 other similar imps over 10,000 similar incidents over the past. And this is the screaming you hear inside of your head all day long. If you could have caught it, you could have sat down, and then you could have remembered the lesson that you heard tonight. And you could have sat back and you could have seen this little imp and maybe another one of 10 years ago, 20 years ago, yesterday. You could have seen in one race through your mind and try to take you over. And you could have remembered the lesson. You could have remembered the truth and the power in it. And you could have given at first a verbal refusal. I'm not going to go along. I caught you that time, and I'm not going to go along with you. Thank God, for the first time in my life I understand that I don't have to go along with it, and I'm not going to. You go on beyond that phase later on, but start with that. Because you saw it nagging you. Remember that you don't have to answer accusations, either inward or outward. But you can begin to understand their nature, understand their mechanicalness, understand that they can't take you over unless you stay unconscious, unless you stay asleep. But if you'd worked on yourself a little bit during the break, you could have just sat back and have conquered the world. Conquered the world of your 30 years here on earth, or your 50 or 80 years here on earth. And by conquering the world of the past, you conquer the world of the future at the same time. Because then you have no future. What you have is right now, which is all you need, which is all your real nature needs. Our old nature, the demon nature, must grab onto the past or the future in order to feel that it's going somewhere, that it's doing something, that it's important, that it's necessary. You, I, are not necessary to anyone or anything except to truth itself. You want to feel needed by somebody, huh? You want to feel important to somebody? And you do little things to make yourself important to that person so as to hold them? A demon is driving you to do that. Your own darkness. And the darkness, the demon in that other person knows it, and they play little games with each other. The two demons, one in you and one in the other person, are just looking for an opportunity to bop each other. If you don't want to get bopped by that demon, get rid of the one in you, and that one will have no one to fight with. The one necessary, essential, marvelous, beautiful thing to do with our lives is to find the truth. All else is unnecessary. Now, aren't you relieved? No, because you don't see it. You will be relieved when you do see it. And tomorrow, I'll give you some very sharp lessons on it. All right, we have lots of time for questions and comments. Keep them short and to the point as usual. You are on for comments and questions. Yes, please.
Whenever you feel emotions of any kind, know immediately they're wrong and be still. Is that right?
Yes, if you can do it, that is fine. Rod, please.
I can't wait till the next accusation.
What are you going to do?
I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to try to remember what I've been told here tonight.
Yes, that would be marvelous. This is very serious, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Was that Joe? Yeah.
Seems that the reason that you tell us to not avoid negative situations connects directly with what you're talking about, because I have to go through hundreds of them to actually be able to see what to do, because everything is so automatic for so many of them. Like you're telling us this, but I find that my reaction is so automatic that to understand it, I have to keep going through it and keep going through it.
Keep facing it,
Right.
Yes. Yes. Chuck.
Last night I seen envy of you, and this now creates conflict and anger and hostility.
In yourself.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Then I seen it of everyone in the class. Then I could see that part where, then if I have this envy toward you, I could have it to anybody I meet on the street.
Correct. Chuck must be envious. His survival depends on it. His false survival depends on it.
Throughout the day, I guess that we go through many different eyes, thousands of them. Does that ever happen to you?
I catch myself in different states at different times, yes. Different states. I catch eyes pretty easily. Let me add something that reminded me of something. Yesterday, Joan and I received a letter from a couple who had come here from some distance to attend the classes for the weekend. And they came just one out of the three classes, as I recall. Right, Joan? One out of the three. In other words, they came, say, Friday night, and after Friday night, they just disappeared after having originally intended to stay for all three. So that was a couple of weeks ago, and yesterday we got a letter from the woman, which is significant in itself that it was from the woman instead of the man, which they don't know about, of course. But as I was reading that letter, Joan, and the rest of you, I was looking at the shift of different eyes from paragraph to paragraph. Gordon, you told me once you got a long letter from someone explaining why they didn't come back or something like that. This one was similar. This was a long letter. This lady was working so hard, so frantically to explain why they left after the first class. And every one of them, of course, was a lie. But the interesting part of it was the shift of eyes in each paragraph. For example, as I remember it, there was an accusing eye. There was a sweet eye. If you come in my area, we certainly want to attend your classes, which was a sweet lying eye. An eye of indignation. Well, what's going on with you? One of I'm a sincere student eye. I've read your books and I've given them to friends. That's a generous eye. I've given lots of your books to my friends. All the way through, seeing a shift. We're here to see all such contradictory, divided selves in ourselves and put an end to them. And all these divided selves, you understand, are to one degree of intensity and demonic power. These demons are our thoughts, our eyes, our divided portions. One thing you can always do to follow up a little bit on your question. I was watching myself during the break, for example, and I was watching my mechanical parts, which we all have and must use. I was watching them operate, and I saw a certain mechanical thing going on, which was proper in its place, but I wanted to examine it a little more closely, and I did, and I got something valuable out of it. I don't want to go into detail on it. But when you see a wrong part in you, you can at least begin to see that it was mechanical, automatic, habitual, that you did it because you always do it. Mm-hmm. You always ask someone how they are because you always do it. What else are you going to say? You don't know how else to say. How are you? As if you care, you know? All right, you're on. Yes, Gordon.
You said once to try to go with a worry thought consciously?
Yes.
Okay, it doesn't work. I don't know why it doesn't work. What happens next, of course, automatically, I'll be in a worry thought. But for the moment that I try to go to one, I can't go to one.
All right. Of course, you can't. If there's worry, there's not consciousness. You understand that. It's one or the other. What we're trying to say is begin to notice it. Yeah. If you're awake, you can't be worried. If you're worried, you can't be awake.
Vernon, you said that we could cancel the pain in a situation because the pain is in us. Can you discuss that a little more?
You can cancel it if you drop thought. What does and emotion? You understand these and drop the body connected thoughts too. All right, you tell me where the panic is. Where else you're going to drop it? We have found out something. You don't want to drop it. As a matter of fact, you are so much in love with your panic that you're going out to do something reckless to keep it going. Don't you see that? We're going to have to stop the chain reaction somewhere, and only one thing will do it. And that is you getting to the point where your real nature, the light, call it what you want, can jump in to give you the jolt so that the mechanical clang, 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 clang stops. It won't stop at start. It's just barely slowed down, just from 1,000 miles an hour to 999.5 miles an hour. A certain point, as you watch yourself inwardly, you will see your reactions slow down, and you should do this in any kind of an irritating situation that you're in, at the office or home, for example, anywhere. You should walk into that office or into that home, and working on yourself, of course, over the years, you can begin to see when you walk in there, while you're aware of that husband is going to be grouchy, you're also aware of all these other things that you've learned here, so that when you go in and he is indeed grouchy, it can't touch you. It doesn't hit you because you're not resisting it. You don't go into that room with the intention of fighting it. Yeah. So that as you practice walking in there, living with that grouch, you can begin to see yourself slowing down. Now this is all we can do at the start, but isn't that something? To simply be able to slow down, to be aware that because he's going to grouch because he always does, but also to be aware of your tension toward it, and your awareness of the tension toward him when you go into the room where your very awareness of it is the beginning of the slowing down. So the point comes when you walk into that room and he grouches at you, you be slowed down to the point where you won't react quite so quickly with your fear and so on. And you can go on and on and on with this to the point where you're not going to walk into that room with that grouch anymore. He's not going to be in your life anymore. You are not required to sacrifice yourself to a sickie. You are not required. And if he says so, don't believe him. He won't put it that way. He'll talk about what you owe him, about, well, the marriage will work out nicely if you'll change. Jay.
So our problem, okay, the grouch is not our problem. Our response, our wrong response to the grouch.
Do you know any grouches, Jay?
Well, myself and many others.
I was just wondering what was going to happen, so
the wrong reaction to the grouch is our...
Yeah. Yeah. A grouch always wrongly reacts to a grouch.
Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome. Dorothy.
Well, there are other groups that think they teach the same thing that you've just been talking about. But since everyone is asleep, you find yourself, or I found myself when I was in that type of a group, that you go around pretending then that when the situation is bad, you pretend that that you are not reacting to it, that it has no effect on you. And so we're just adding one more pile of phoniness.
Of course, of course. Yes, and the word love is used, isn't it? How can you love your enemies when you hate your enemies? Can you see that you hate your enemies? If you can see that, then you'll get to the point where you can, listen to this. You can love your enemies out of existence. They're not out there at all. They are not out there at all, and they never were. But it isn't Vernon's love or Dorothy's, is it? Vernon has no love at all. Not for any of you in this room. Dorothy doesn't have any love for anyone in this room. Sally doesn't. Joan doesn't. Rudy doesn't. If we try to have love, we're all in trouble. So, a sleeping unloving human being is going to act lovingly. The vicious wolf is going to behave like the meek lamb. A vicious wolf acting as the lamb is still a wolf. And the lambs had better beware. Sooner or later, the wolf will behave like a wolf. Oh, let me read something to you. I was going to read this.
Did you want to write it?
It's fine, thank you, as it is. It's very short. Write it down if you want. Who is that nonviolent man? With a question mark after it. Who is that nonviolent man? He is a violent man who presently finds it personally profitable to appear nonviolent. And he fools almost everyone. Change it. Yes, sure. Please. Joe.
Will you try to explain then what the difference is between the person who acts non-violently yet represses everything and sitting there, as you described it tonight, trying to not act violently when someone accuses you?
Yeah. Oh, there are two main things why he does it. One is his self-image, and there's certain advantages. People will vote for him, they'll make him a preacher or whatever. The image part, and that connects, of course, with the outer rewards. Outer rewards and his self-image, which is very valuable to him because it does get outer rewards. And when he gets enough outer rewards so that he doesn't have to get them anymore through the image, it will shift. Shut it off again. I don't want these preachers suing us. Or the consequences. Joe.
Then what we're trying to do is drop all images when we are accused and experience it without labeling it.
Find out what image is being accused. That is what suffers. What image is being accused? If it fade away through insight, would you have any pain at all?
No.
Right. Second, Jim. Are you willing to blast your life? Or you want to play it easy? Take it easy. I'm going to blast myself so badly, you people are going to have to run to keep up with me. You'll have to get a motor scooter. Now that's a picture, isn't it? Jim.
It's much easier to deal with an actual physical accuser outside of yourself than it is with the ones inside.
Yeah. We can. It's easy to. Then the blame is on him for one thing. You caused me trouble. I'm innocent. Look. Don't I look innocent? Huh? You are evil. I'm innocent. What a marvelous way to go down the steps into hell.
You were talking about love. A friend was gossiping to me today about a gal who her husband divorced her 5-10 years ago, and she said, can you imagine this girl still has all his pictures all over? Can you imagine how she still loves him? But I could see that she doesn't love him. She's keeping all those pictures there because she doesn't want to let go of her image, herself.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And there's also a lot of self-protection in that. For example, a woman like that might, for example, as one way of her escape, would be to not go out with other men at all. And the reason she'd give, well, I'm still faithful to the memory, he died, or he even beat me, but I was loyal to him, all that stuff. This is her protection against going out and facing the world, where she can live in dreamland. You have to enter right in the thick of the world in order to conquer it. If you don't do that, then you are indeed going to build your own imaginary world inside and have an imaginary conquest, which is the only thing that can happen if you're living in an imaginary world. Because the imaginary self has built the imaginary world of how marvelous you either are or could be if you weren't persecuted so much. So you live in that imaginary conquest, which is the wall. We put a wall around our little world, don't we? And don't you come over that wall. You're intruding on my little private daydream. Means we're going to have to break down the wall and let the daydream run out, spread out and be destroyed. And then after that, or in connection with it, go right out into the world and say, I'm here, world, to let you do anything you want to me, and I'm going to stand here quietly and watch it happen, not react to it as we discussed, which you won't do overnight. I'm going to let you do anything you want to me just to see what happens to me, to the point where I conquer the world by remaining silent to it. If you remain silent to yapping people, they're going to go away. They have to, because they have no one to yap back at them, and that's half the motive, them yapping at you, so you'll yap back at them, so they can have justification for yapping back at you again. If you remain silent, they're going to be very disappointed in you. Now they have to go find someone on their own level, and now the two sickies are happy making each other sick. Yes, Phyllis.
Now, wouldn't that work in the internal world too? There's a lot of yapping that goes on internally. And isn't it possible for some part of us to sit quietly and just watch it until it just dissipates?
Yes, it's the same process, really. Right.
I don't know if you're aware, but this has been going on for days now. This is yapping in my head while you're talking. And I catch myself doing it, and it's beginning to dissipate. So this kind of hit when you said that. I'm aware of what's going on, and I make no attempt now to stop it. I just let it go.
All right. Are you aware, do you understand that the dark parts in any of us don't want you to pay attention, don't want you to absorb, don't want you to understand? Now you begin to understand that, and that will begin to put an end to all the yapping that doesn't want you to hear these truths. Part of you knows you're getting the truth here, right? And yet the yapping continues, doesn't it? That's because we're still divided. Go ahead, Lorraine. Excuse me.
Yesterday, I noticed that a heaviness in myself, and I saw several accusing eyes. Also, a concern for today or the future. And I practiced what you told us. I stopped right in the middle of the floor and stood there. And when I felt an urge to move, I was curious. I didn't know if it was to escape the pain and find another distraction. So I just watched it. And what happened is I did something very practical to take care of the concern that I had for today. I felt a lighter sensation, and what I did was right.
Yes. You know, such a little thing as standing in the middle of the room and watch yourself sooner or later being moved to certain action, is the beginning of the ending of all this vanity that we are the originator and empowerers of ourselves, and beginning to see that we are acted upon. Now, here's a line here. Are we acted upon by our own delusions, our own sickness, which is going to keep us miserable, or are we acted upon by the all, which will make us free? That's the question. We can be acted upon whichever we want. And it starts by seeing that we have no actions of our own at all. When you say, I founded that business and became a millionaire, I am a marvelous mother or wife or husband, who are you talking about? Did you create yourself? By dissolving ourselves, we rise in resurrection to eternal life. By dissolving ourselves, we rise in resurrection to eternal life. And it can happen in this life. What do you value? How about that for self-inquiry? Look at your day, look at your week, and ask yourself how you occupied yourself. I'm not talking about going to work so much, things like that. But what did you occupy yourself with in your spare time? What did you do with your thoughts all day long? Can't you do that and see what is the dominating value in your life? And can you see that what dominates you may not be rewarding you? But rather punishing you? You're on. Yes, Richard.
Richard has a nice image because he thinks he can gain something from that. Is it?
Yes, images are always greedy, acquisitive.
Acquisitive?
Acquisitive, wants to acquire things, and very, very persistent. And very clever at calling itself something else. It may be a shock, but a healthy one, to see our actual motives for doing something or saying something. Why not see the actual motive? The only harm that can come from us seeing our actual motive is the harm to this dark nature which is harming us. If you want to do harm to the demon, that is, chase him out, then see your actual motives for doing anything. And don't be ashamed of yourself. You will be at the start. Don't be ashamed of the motive, because then you are part of it by being ashamed of it. You're not standing aside and seeing it. You've joined it when you're ashamed. If you can see it without shame, that means you're standing apart from it and not taking it as being a part of your basic nature, which it isn't. But we've been possessed by it. One of your best friends in changing yourself inwardly is shame, humiliation, embarrassment. In short, to see what an utter phony I have been, you have been. What's the matter? You tell me what's the matter with seeing that we're phonies. You can't. There's no way you can tell me what's wrong with seeing that I'm a phony or you are. Because everything is good about it if we really, really do it and not just think about it or call ourselves very honest. The only way you're going to get free of it is to see it operating inside you. And the only way you're going to see it is to go through the shock of seeing it. And the only way to do that is to have even 1 ounce of courage or no courage at all to be shocked to see what happens. I saw a hand, Jim.
The positive thinkers cannot stand this class.
Tell us why.
Well, because they have that image of being in charge of their life and saying that you've got to think good thoughts. And here you're saying that, you see, you've got to see the phoniness, and they say, well, if that's what you dwell on and see that, that's what you're going to become. And it blows their whole image. They can't take it.
Yes. And look, listen to this. You remind me of something, Jim. Positive thinkers who come to this class get very negative thinkers because they take our cosmic positive thinking as negative. Isn't that something? Go ahead.
Well, an example of that, when we were over in Fred and Rudy's place there for a month.
Yeah, right.
And there were 4 people who come from a church of positive thinking. And they were telling how they go about their day treating people, like seeing love in this person, and that person was going to react positively. And yet they became very negative in the class because they thought you were extremely negative, and the thought goes through my mind, well, why didn't they do this to you instead of becoming negative?
I remember that very well, Jim, and I couldn't do it. I could have embarrassed that poor lady by just looking at her and calmly, and when they get really getting hot and angry, by just saying, "Do you love me now?"
Oh.
Yeah.
You once said that we've all been hurt very deeply. Is our concern for the self directly connected with that?
I didn't follow that.
You said once that we'd all been hurt very deeply.
Yes.
Is, let's say, my concern with my own self-security directly attached to that?
Oh yes, very much so. They're all fellow imps. You have no business sitting here in this room right now feeling hurt over anything. If you're doing so, that means that you're a time machine that repeats over and over and over all the thoughts, all the feelings, recalling all the experiences, savoring them, loving the taste of them over and over and over. Admit it now. Admit that you recall, or rather permit, the flow into your mind of unpleasant, tormenting feelings. Admit it. Right?
Yes.
So you are hurt. Why are you hurt? Because you want to be, and you wallow in it. Guess what you are worshiping, or I, if I do it. Guess what we are worshiping? Pain. Don't you want to fall off your chair? We are worshipers of agony. Aren't we? Isn't that what we think about, feel all day? Isn't that what we looking around for someone to fight with, huh? Have you ever been where you looking for someone to fight with? Aren't you worshiping the pain of argument? What are you worshiping? Find out. Hatred against anyone, no matter what they did against you, you have no business hating anyone, or you're a worshiper of hatred. And guess what that God of hatred will give to you? We know, because we're suffering from it. Did you have your hand up, Phyllis? Go ahead, please.
You call us time machines. I tried an experiment today that I'd like to share with you. It takes such a long time for this information to get through our thick skulls. And the whole idea is to experiment with some of it and at least try it for ourselves. I walked around today and yesterday with the idea that there was only now. No other time but now. And I refuse to think about the future or past. There is no future, there is no past, just now. And it's amazing the relief that happens. The flood of thoughts just stops coming, and there's a relief and a release. That's it. Period.
Does anyone see a flaw in something Phyllis said?
Yes.
Who said yes? Raise your hand, please, so I can see. Who raised your hand? Thank you. Now go ahead. Comment on.
There was anxiousness in what she was saying.
Rod?
She was teaching also.
Go ahead, Larry.
Well, speaking of awareness, and I had to move out of the way for fear a pencil might come against me.
Jim.
Look how well I am doing, rather than look how sick I am.
Sally?
Okay. Phyllis said, and the negative thoughts stopped coming, which they don't stop coming.
Can you think about awareness that gives you relief? Yes or no? And I'm going to watch you.
No.
All right. You told an unconscious falsehood then, Phyllis. Chuck.
So in other words, in the now, you're telling us to take the good and the bad.
What?
When we're in the now, like Phyllis was describing, we're taking the good thoughts and the bad thoughts, or whatever's happening.
When you're in the now, there are no good thoughts or bad thoughts.
Vernon, we often want to convince you that we do our homework. And we don't do it.
You know that you think you can get away without examinations in this school? Don't you know that you have an examination every second? How many of you failed it? Every second out in that world, 24 hours a day, we are under an examination. The teacher says, stay awake. You feel a pain, you flop the lesson. You didn't hear what the teacher said. We have maybe 2 or 3 more minutes if you'd like to bring something up. Connie.
Was Phyllis in imagination?
Yes.
All right, and had she not spoken up, she would not have known that she had been in imagination.
Yes, and therefore her active part and then the correction of it got her something, yes.
Thought cannot make a decision to live in the now.
Correct. Correct. Thought can't live in the now. It doesn't know the now. It knows yesterday and tomorrow. It can talk about the now. Yes.
So thought is only good for practical purposes, like doing our job, cooking dinner, and that's it.
And spiritual practical purpose. Remember, there are right spiritual thoughts, are there not? Of course there are.
Thinking about a work principle or...
Yeah, sure. Sure. We've had 1,000 of them just tonight. Right thoughts. But we have to remember, one right thought is to remember that the thought about freedom is not freedom itself, is it?
It's not a right thought. When you are accused of something and you're not at the stage where you can be aware immediately, but your thought says, now if I go this way, I am dragged down by this one negative answering back. If I go the other way, I save myself that dragging down. Is that not right thought?
If you can remember a right thought, that is a proper guidance, most certainly. I gave you a thought was it a week ago? I gave you a right thought. The thought was when you get in your car, you were going to get into it consciously, knowing you were going to get into it. How many of you succeeded, if you remember it? How many of you did not succeed? All right. When you go into the door of your home tonight, you will remember yourself. You will know you go through that door.
But that was a great lesson. You told us about the momentum. And if we did it once, we could start. We had to remember that we were going to do this, and from that, do something else. I think that was tremendous.
That's
one of the
right.
best lessons.
Chuck.
Well, when you're in this awareness, Vernon, and you say there's no thoughts, then all knowledge ceases in you?
No, I may go into knowledge, which I'm doing right now. I have knowledge of the English language, which I'm speaking now. I'm speaking from knowledge now, but I'm also aware that I am speaking. Go ahead.
Can we follow it more? Now, say you're out for a walk, and you're just watching what's going on, and you don't want to think about it. You just want to just watch the countryside.
Or what? Oh, I'm not following you. What?
What happens with all this knowledge that you have when you're just being aware?
Oh, it's stored. It's stored. You can take it out when you need it. You have knowledge about 50 million things. Grocery shopping, huh?
But you don't need it all the time, right?
No. You need it when you need it. Good evening. See you tomorrow morning.